Hey guys, as you can see, I a little overslept this morning, but anyway, this is a third video about my experience in getting Tesla solar panels, and I will add in the state of Florida because a lot of what I'm going to say this morning is related to the Florida experience. So, things were progressing quite nicely. I had some interaction with the Tesla project manager about panel placement, and we'd agreed on a move for a couple of panels that we felt aesthetically would improve things um, to appease my homeowners association. And at that point, I got the revised design, but also I got a letter from Tesla informing me that because I live in the state of Florida, and I don't think this is restricted to the state of Florida, it's something which is fairly common across the United States. Um, for a system with a panel capacity beyond 11.76 kilowatts, I would be required to show to the utility that I had $1 million or more of liability insurance. And the justification, if you can call it that, is they set tiers of solar production capacity, and tier one is up to 10 kilowatts of production. So remember, 11.76 kilowatts don't produce 11.76 kilowatts of panels don't produce 11.76 kilowatts of power. Uh, there's losses, and it seems like the figure arrived at here is 11.76 produces 10 kilowatts of power. The reality is it's really based upon your inverter capacity. So Tesla sell you effectively like a 6.6 and a 3.3 inverter to take you to 9.9. So homeowners insurance typically does not include liability insurance up to the level of $1 million. And apparently, if you want to get more liability insurance, you can get a policy which is called an umbrella policy, which basically is a cover your ass policy. Typically, from what I was reading, for people who've got money, people who can be sued and can lose a lot of money if they don't have enough insurance coverage. So I've seen differing opinions on whether an umbrella policy would actually satisfy the requirement, whether an umbrella policy would agree to cover you being treated as though you were a solar utility by, in my case, Florida Power and Light. And I've seen varying discussions of the costs of an umbrella policy from $300 a year to $600 a year. But in my particular case, I don't even have homeowners insurance to start with, because the base would be your homeowners insurance and the liability in that, and then the umbrella would cover you with additional liability coverage. I own the home outright, and my insurance company was Universal. And the last time, which may have been 3 or 4 years ago, that they decided they were going to hike my rates again, I just decided that enough was enough. I wasn't going to be paying that, especially because I had an absolutely massive windstorm deductible. So basically, if a windstorm came through and took my roof off, I would be $20,000 out of pocket before the insurance company would look to chip in. And my attitude was at $3,000 a year plus, I should just put the money aside. And have the cash. I would say that when if a storm hits and everyone needs new roofs, the people who are going to get roofs are the people who aren't waiting for an insurance settlement. The people who say, yes, I've got the cash, come and do my roof. So that's my attitude. So I looked again at insurance, and I found that the situation is even worse than it was a few years ago. In the state of Florida now, nobody will write a homeowners insurance policy, with the exception of Citizens, which is a kind of government-owned, I think it's state government-owned quasi company. and they have a terrible reputation. And it was cheap. It was $2,000, which of course, $2,000 a year for nothing is really not cheap, but it's relatively cheap. And also remember, I don't really like the idea of insurance, except for absolutely, catastrophic disaster. My water heater's gone. I just fix it. I have a leak. I fix it. I don't put in claims. That's the way I am. So, um, on that kind of, year on year typical things that happen in your house, I'm not an insurance person. I'm just, I'll suck it up and pay for it. So there's no value for me. Also, I've heard that if you are that kind of person, and there are some people who do, make ridiculous claims. People in my neighborhood who are making claims on the insurance for a roof that is 30 years old, that was rated for 25 years, expecting to get a new roof. That's just, it's unethical, because if they actually manage it, then that cost is passed on to me. And that's probably why no one will write insurance in Florida, because people apparently can get new roofs on their insurance just because the roofs are old. So there you go. So my decision is no, I'm not going to get homeowners insurance at $2,000 a year, and I'm therefore not going to get an umbrella policy or an additional liability policy, because essentially I'd be looking at being initially, let's say, $2,500 out of pocket, and apparently citizens jack up your rates. You'll be $2,000 for a year or two, and next time you're three, and then next time you're 3.5. So that's not happening. And so the option that was provided in the letter from Tesla was that you can downsize to drop into tier 1. And I'm an engineer, I'm a technical guy, I'm a problem solver, and I'm also a real contrarian, and I don't like being bullied. I'm the guy who stands up to the bully. So I'm not happy about that, and I don't want to kind of accept defeat. So the downside of contracting Tesla is probably a lack of flexibility, a lack of ability or willingness to work with you around problems like this. But here's what I have said to them. What I've said is, okay, I cannot grid tie, i.e. connect my panels into a grid tied inverter beyond the 10 kilowatt capacity, beyond the 11.76 panel capacity. But what if I took the additional panels and I off-grid them? And it just so happens that I've been thinking about the situation of, being in Florida with a solar panel system and being unable to use it during an extended power cut. And so I had bought myself a couple of high capacity solar generators called Bluetti EP500. I actually have just changed my purchase to be the Pro model, and I'll get to that. So I've got two of those that will allow me to have 120/240 volts power. And those Bluetti solar generators, the idea is that their primary power source is solar. So on the back of the two Pros, there are two MPPT inputs. That's basically a solar charger input into which you can put a string of solar panels. And each of those inputs has a 1200 watt capacity. So according to my calculations, I'm assuming that you kind of overload the 1200 watts with more panel capacity. So again, in the same way that 11.76 kilowatts generates 10 kilowatts, my assumption is that I can put 4 of the Tesla panels, which are 340 watts. That would take me to 1360 watts into a 1200 watt MPPT input. And therefore, I would be able to use 16 panels to power these Bluettis. And for the purposes of state inspection, what I would do is I would just have the Bluettis. They're two suitcase-like boxes on wheels, and you have a cable that you plug into both for your 240, and I would just have that in the garage saying, yeah, that's my power backup, state and local inspector, are you satisfied? Once they've gone, then what I will do is I will probably set up an automatic transfer switch and power certain loads in the house permanently from the Bluettis. It's going to be the refrigerators, lighting. It might even be my air conditioning indoor unit, which is just a fan. Theoretically, it has a heater, but I'd never turn that on. So that's my plan. So what I've said to Tesla is, number one, will you install the rails for the full capacity, the full 48 panels that I had requested, the 16 point something kilowatt installation? I don't see why they wouldn't. They could charge me money for it. They're already there. It's no big deal. We already have the design. All that it would mean is that I would have exposed rails where I didn't have panels. Number two is, would you sell me the panels, the additional panels beyond the 11.76 capacity? I think it's going to take us from 34 to 48 panels. So it would be an additional 14 panels. Again, I'm hoping they'll say, well, why not? I mean, we've got them. When we know what we pay for them, we can sell them to you at a price. Okay. Now, my absolute ideal, but I don't believe this would happen, is that Tesla would pivot and say, okay, we're going to ask for a permit for a hybrid installation, which is going to be a mix of grid-tied and off-grid. And they could install the panels, configure the strings as I need them, which would end up being 4 strings of 4. In fact, I actually think they may need to actually sell me additional 2 panels to do that, but that's fine. And run the wiring for those strings down to the same place as the grid-tied strings and provide an interconnection point into which the solar generators can be connected. I can dream, can't I? So that's where I left it with them, just basically asking them, you know, how far along that path are they willing to meet me? And the other thing really is, you know, this is a problem that they will be facing in the state of Florida and in lots of other states. When I was looking on forums, I was finding lots of people in other places. I mean, I think it was like Alabama and Tennessee and places like that, where the same kind of arbitrary rule has been put in place. And so just to take a quick detour into that rule, the justification is, wow, you know, you're running a solar generation plant. You know, there's a danger that you're going to electrocute our linemen. That seems to be the justification. Well, the bottom line is, you know, when you go from, I was going to be going from, say, 10 kilowatts of generative capacity to something like 14 kilowatts. So again, the 16 kilowatt panels, we're going to come into like a total of 14 or 15 kilowatts of inverter. In fact, it's not 50. I'd need to look up the exact numbers on the Tesla inverters. I might pause the video and look at that. But that isn't going to be the difference between you electrocuting and not electrocuting a lineman. You're not going to electrocute a lineman because there are safety features built into the inverters that simply do not allow you to send power into the grid when there is no power coming from the grid. There is sensing. So the requirement should be that you sign an agreement that you will not tamper with your equipment, and that there's an inspection that you have the equipment which meets the required specs, which is usually going to be an underwriter's laboratory specification or standard. So what's it really about? First of all, it's kind of convenient. So that 10 kilowatt might have made sense when the regulations were drafted, which I'm assuming is a long time ago, when that was by, you know, solar installation standards fairly large, but now it isn't. And for me, a just rule would be that clearly, if you are generating an amount of electricity which corresponds to your own needs in your home, then you're tier 1. you should be grandfathered into tier one, regardless of how much power that is. You might want to set a top limit on that, because you can imagine some guy up on the coast who's got what would you call it, an enclave, a campus or something like that, who's got 10,000 square feet of roof space and is generating 100 kilowatts of power. Yeah, but I would say that you could probably take it to at least 20 kilowatts, which would cover a large home, and say, well, that's the limit. But what does this do for Florida Power and Light? Well, 10 kilowatts and below helps them out, because you will be producing your peak power at a time of year and a time of day when FP&L is struggling to produce enough power to power all the air conditioning systems in their area. So you alleviate the need for them to put overcapacity into their generation plant, which affects their efficiency and their running costs. So that's good for them. What isn't good for them is if you are self-sufficient and you're not their customer. So the rules are convenient for them. It allows them to get what they want, but for you to not get what you want. So that's where my opinion on the rule. One last thing about that: a guy called Achim Ginsberg Klempt, who lives over in Sarasota, took the Florida Public Service Commission to court and all the way to the state Supreme Court, trying to have these rules overturned, and he lost the case. And I asked myself if Tesla at some point is going to try and weigh in here, because they're essentially capitulating here and losing something like 40% of the sale value to me by having to adhere to this rule, or me having made the decision to not go ahead because of this rule. And I think most people will find themselves in the same boat. Once you've got a few $100s of insurance penalty for going beyond that capacity, the sums don't add up anymore. Your return on investment period suddenly jumps out from 10 years to 15 years or 20 years, So, it will put a brake on the volume of their overall sales and on the size of their sales. So, I would hope that they might want to do something about that. So that's where we are. I might check my email in a second. In fact, I might pause the video and check my email and see if I've had a response. I'm not feeling very optimistic, because I did feel like I got a very much boilerplate response from my project manager. Like they don't want to get creative. And I understand, their plan for keeping the costs down is to follow, tram lines and to not deviate. So I'm hoping at least that they will agree to install the rails and some of the panels, minimum install the rails, because that's the headache for me. I can source panels. I might even be able to source the same panels. But the making holes in the roof is something I do not want to do myself. So I just went and checked, and it's a 7.6 and 3.8 kilowatt inverters. So pair would give you 15.4. No, 15.2 kilowatts of capacity. The 7.6 plus the 3.8 would give me 11.4 kilowatts of potential capacity, and FP&L are going to make me drop the panels so that my effective capacity is going to be 10 kilowatts. So again, you're leaving some capacity of your inverters on the table. Not too thrilled about that. I still don't have a reply from the project manager. I'm hoping that's because he's taken it upstairs. Now, the one final thing I will say is that, the Powerwall, the Tesla Powerwall, I didn't see it as a very compelling value here in Florida, because we're not generally subject to the kind of rolling blackouts that happen in California. What we are subject to is once in a long while a very extended blackout because of the hurricane and the fact that FPNL suck and winds wreck their electrical installations. Understand that, in other countries, if you have a big windstorm in England, uh, nothing happens. Nobody loses power. Uh, I mean, hurricane might be a different deal, but you can have a windstorm here with 50-mile-an-hour winds and things go out. So, I mean, it really is pathetic. Uh, FPNL are a lot better at writing to you to tell you what they're doing than actually seeming to do anything effective. So, rant over. The Powerwall is not that compelling here because I was going to have to put in something like $15,000 after-tax rebates to get a pair of Powerwalls that would provide me with the ability to keep my solar on when the power went out. And my power outages, except for hurricanes, is a couple of hours every couple of years. So that's expensive. That's a lot of money, And that's why I decided to go for these Bluetti EP 500 Pros. I actually initially got the 500s rather than the Pro. They're two different models. I went back and got the Pros because they have more solar input. They go from 1200 watts to 2400 watts. And with this new development, that becomes important. But if with the Powerwall, you were able to not grid tie some element of your capacity, and therefore you were able to get more panels and achieve full self-sufficiency with solar, that would be an additional justification for the Powerwall, and it might have made me look differently at it. I probably still wouldn't have gone for it myself because of the investment, but I still think it's a potential for Tesla to think about a design that they can propose to someone, and especially in a large home, say, well, yeah, you can have 10 kilowatts grid tied, and if you want more, this is how we do it, and it involves a Powerwall because you have to off-grid it, and if you off-grid, you have to have battery backup to see you through the ups and downs of solar production. So that was, I would like them to be saying, we don't like this rule either. We're going to lobby to try and get it moved. And also, we're going to come up with a technical solution to innovate around it and give the finger to the utility. So there we are. That's been 22 minutes. It's a long rant. Thank you for being patient. And I hope it's useful to you. And I will see you next time when I've had some developments, which will probably be in about a week.